Welcome to the Visual Center. I'm Trent, and in today's video we'll be continuing our discussion on camera focus, specifically the differences between the various autofocus area modes. So what are autofocus area modes? Autofocus areas allow us to select the amount and location of the area within the frame which will be considered by our cameras for autofocus. Like this. I can tell my camera to consider everything within this box when autofocusing. My face takes up most of the space, so it's what's in focus. I could also make this selection smaller, like this. This box is much smaller and my eye takes up most of the space, so my eye is what's in focus. I could also use the buttons on the rear of my camera to move the box. If I move this box to the left, now my bookshelf is in focus. And since my camera is being to focus on anything within that box, that's what's in focus. Let's bring the focus back to my face. So, as I just demonstrated, I'm selecting different autofocus areas. I can change both the size and the location. There are essentially 4 focusing area modes on modern day cameras. The names vary a bit depending on camera brand, but they do fairly the same thing. You can choose small points within your frame to focus on, or larger areas which take into consideration more of the frame. I would call the first of these autofocus area modes spot or point autofocus. This setting utilizes the smallest of all the autofocus areas, like this box. Depending on the camera, I can move this box from the top right corner down to the bottom middle of the frame, or even all the way to the left. On my current camera, I can select almost any spot within my entire frame. It looks like this. Now, some older cameras will probably only have a few boxes on the middle which you can select. Through the viewfinder, it may look similar to this. I spent years shooting on a camera with only 9 selectable points in the middle of the frame. So please remember, you can still create amazing images with any camera. The next autofocus area I would call wide, expanded, or zone autofocus. This is just a larger area. This area often just takes into consideration the area around the first autofocus area I just mentioned, like this. You can see a few more squares have appeared around my original single point. The area my camera will now consider for autofocus is much wider, basically a larger box. Now, the next 2 autofocus area modes are tracking modes. The first I would call basic tracking autofocus. To utilize this autofocus area mode, I would use the buttons on the rear of my camera to move a cursor and select an object or area within my frame. My camera will now lock onto that object. Let's use my hand for demonstration. I make the selection. Now, when I move my hand or the camera, the cursor stays locked onto the object and my focus continually updates so that the item which was originally selected will remain in focus. I think it's pretty cool, right? Now, this obviously would be great for moving subject matter, sports or action shots, any subject that's moving within the frame. The second tracking method has received a lot of attention lately. This method is eye autofocus or IAF, or face tracking, and it does exactly what it sounds like. When using this method, a camera will recognize the fact that we're shooting a person's face and will focus on one of the subject's eyes, like this. Now, as the subject's moving throughout the frame, the camera will track and update the autofocus as needed. The reason this is important is because when photographing a person's face, the eyes are usually the most important thing to have in focus. Now, I think this last autofocus method is amazing. It's one of the few updates I've experienced within digital photography, which makes a big difference in the way I shoot. And I think these big changes in my shooting methods are really far and few between. So, I'm actually curious to hear from you. Have you had any experiences where you tried a new technique or process like IAF and had it change the way you shoot? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. Now, here's the important question. How do we select the different autofocus area modes on our specific cameras? Now, every camera brand and even model is going to be a bit different, so the best I can do is to tell you to look for these symbols. Now, if you can find any of these symbols on your camera, that's how you'll change the autofocus area mode. Now let's clean this up a bit. Here are a list of 4 popular camera manufacturers. Here are their different autofocus area mode symbols. Now I've organized each into a group according to how they function. Feel free to take a screenshot or download a document containing this info for free. The link can be found in the description for this video. Alright, hopefully you found this helpful. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you won't miss my next video on autofocus. If you have any questions regarding what we discussed today or autofocus in general, please leave them in the comments below, and we'll do our best to respond. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. I like the noise. The noise helps. Maybe I should do the noise during the video.